Okay. So, yeah, let's get started here. Where do we begin? Obviously, people know me. This is my channel. I am a content creator. I focus on three main things: PCS prep, travel, and local life as an American living here in Germany. And it's no surprise that I've teamed up with the best pet shipper in the United States, because from my perspective and my audience, they're mainly military, civilian or active duty, and they're coming over from the United States going to Germany, and you guys help with that, obviously, and we'll get all into that. But I just wanted to kind of let that be known out there for people that may be new and seeing this video. So let's get into you guys. So who are you and what do you guys do? Let's talk about that first.
So my name is Lindsay Maroon. So I own Feathers and Fur Express. So as you stated, we're a pet shipping company. So we primarily ship pets out of the United States, so from the United States to other countries abroad.
And how long have you guys been doing that for?
So the company started in 2018. So initially we were doing domestic pet shipping for about a year. So international pet shipping since about 2019. Okay.
And I actually didn't know that. You guys started the same year that I started. That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I was thinking that too when you were telling me earlier.
Yeah. I guess we didn't go over that part when we met each other. Okay. So kind of I wanted to create this this little forum here because we've been working together for a little bit. You guys have been helping out my audience because, you know, people that are in the military, there's one military flight that goes over into Germany. And if they don't get a pet slot on that flight, then they need to look for pet shippers, or they fly the pets over themselves. And it's like, for my audience, it is like super nerve-wracking and very stressful. I'm sure for basically anybody that's moving a pet overseas, it's pretty stressful. So did we talk about why you guys kind of started the business and all that? Did you go over all that? I don't remember. Maybe.
No. So basically, I used to be a geologist, so I was doing petroleum geology at that time, and also some like gold exploration geology and whatnot. But so I was doing that, and I had transitioned to petroleum geology, and I just really did not like that job. And so some issues arose in my life. I ended up actually getting cancer. And so I quit that job and was like, all right, I'm going to do what I want with my life. So I do love geology, but not petroleum geology. And then so I transitioned to starting my own business. And so my sister and I actually started this business together. She's always been in the pet industry. And so she knew there was this demand to move pets domestically around the United States because it's very hard to work with the US-based airlines. So that's one of the first hurdles, which anybody will realize when they start trying to ship their pets anywhere.
And why is it so difficult? Like, I know that's been a problem from my audience as well, but like, why is that?
Well, basically, the airlines all set their own rules on what they will and won't ship. So there's IATA rules, which is basically the international governing agency. And then they have to follow those at a minimum. And then on top of that, they can place their own rules. So most of the all of the US-based airlines, for example, won't ship any aggressive breeds or snub-nosed breeds. That alone is a big hurdle. And then they'll take a max crate size on a certain aircraft. There's a lot. And then they have temperature restrictions. So for example, Delta won't ship pets above 80 degrees, and they'll only ship for active military right now since COVID hit. And American is a more common one that people can use. Basically, American and Alaskan are the most common ones that people can really use still. And they both have a temperature cutoff at 85 degrees for most ports. Alaskan has a little bit more flexibility.
Okay. And with the actual summer months coming up here, I want to get more into that. We'll get there, but I want to get in specific details because I know people are stressed. That's another big stressor, is like getting your pet over there when the seasons change, and especially in the heat. So we'll get into the details on that. But before that, I want to know, like, so there's obviously all these different rules and stuff with all the airlines. Like, how did you like quickly learn all of these things? You know, like, did your sister teach you all this stuff, or like did you just have to go on there and just start learning of this stuff yourself, or what?
Really, I taught myself, and I joined IPATA, which is basically the International Pet and Animal Travel Association. So by joining them, I learned a lot also But my sister really was just doing domestic. Like when we started doing that, we were just doing ground shipping actually. So I was coordinating these routes, and these pets were being driven all over the country. And that was just a bit too stressful for me because you have these pets for days on end, and that's very hard to manage, very anxious people, and also making sure that pet is doing really well when you have 10 other pets that you're transporting across the country. And I've always been very good at, computer work, logistics. So it was a natural transition for international for me because domestic is a lot more hands-on and international is a lot more coordination, a lot more logistics, paperwork, making sure you're following the regulations, following the airline's rules. So yeah, that's kind of that natural transition that happened for me.
Okay, gotcha. So you just kind of learned by doing, it sounds like.
Yeah, right? And so we started with one breeder actually that we were shipping domestically, and she wanted to ship these puppies to Thailand and to Barbados. And so we just figured out how to do it for those particular pets. Okay. And then I just I can do this. Like I can make money doing this. And so I just transitioned to that wave and stopped doing the domestic. And that's so just learning how to read the regulations and also talking to other pet shippers at that time, trying to get information, insight, and then just taking it from there. So whenever I would get like a really complex country, for example, like my first shipment to Australia, I actually hired another pet shipper to help me do it, then learn the process. And now I've, been shipping pets to Australia for years now. So that was all in 2019. I was doing all of this.
And where do you guys ship? Excuse me. Where do you guys ship now the most? Like, where's your hot spots?
Well, because I would say half of our clients are military or so, maybe not half, but close. So most of the places they're going are the most common locations. So Germany, Italy, Japan, those are the most common. And then also South Korea, UK, but really, we end up with a lot of pets going all over the place. South Africa is very common, Central and South America for just Americans that are retiring, and foreign nationals moving back home. Like you get a lot of off ones, someone from Nigeria that wants to move back home and take their pet.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. So let's talk about this then. And we'll just kind of back up a little bit. Like, what are your main services for your company? What do pet shippers actually do?
So we can basically arrange the transport.
Wait, hold on really quick. Sorry. I'm about to choke on myself. I'm like, my eyes are watering and whatnot. And like, I'm going to choke if I don't get something to drink. Like, hold on. All I have is coffee and now it's empty. Give me a second. Oh, I was dying. That might have to be a blooper. Okay, let's get back into it. Okay, so I want to just go over the basics. So what does a pet shipper actually do? Tell me the different services that you guys provide.
Okay, so basically we can arrange the shipment from door to door if needed, if someone needs that most of the time. But our basic services that are pretty much included with almost everybody is the flight itself, which we send pets as cargo. We also pre-complete the health certificate. So we compile all the health documents and make sure your pet has met the regulations. If not, we tell you, okay, go get this vaccine, get that vaccine. Yeah. We pre-complete the health certificate. We send all of those documents to the person's veterinarian, or if they need us to hire a veterinarian for them. And we arrange for the documents to go to the USDA. So basically for most countries, the USDA allows the veterinarian to submit the documents to them online. So we basically make that submission for them. So the veterinarian just has to do the final signing on the health certificate, upload that to the submission and hit send. And it goes to the USDA. They'll endorse it. And we send a FedEx label for it to go back to either us or the client. And then we meet the person at the airport the day of the flight and we check their pet in. Off it goes. And then you can do all the add-ons. So for example, some people need us to provide the crate also, or they need us to pick their pet up at the home and bring it to the airport. So we can arrange all of those things also. And when the pet gets to the destination, say for example, Germany, most countries, people can clear their own pets through customs. Some countries, they cannot do that. Germany, you can. And so most people will do that, but some people, they can't take, for example, maybe they don't have a vehicle that could transport the crate or whatever. So then they'll need us to hire somebody to do customs clearance for them and deliver their pet to their home.
Okay, so yeah, it does sound like there's a lot of coordination because you're getting people from all over the United States, right? So like when you need to go talk to a veterinarian, like do you have a list of the veterinarians in certain states? It's like how do you know who to go talk to and whatnot?
Yeah, so basically what we do is for every single client, we add that veterinarian to our database. So we know, and we flag certain veterinarians. And then of course there are certain veterinarians that we use again and again and again.
Like red flag them, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Every now and then we have to do that. But and it goes both ways. There's some that we use all the time. So we have a list basically of all the vets that we've ever worked with, so we can search by city or state. Or the USDA also has a list of all the accredited veterinarians. So we can also, if someone's in a rural place that we've never, had shipped a pet from that town, we can find a veterinarian nearby or maybe in that town if there is one that can do it.
Okay. And then, okay, so that's the veterinarian part. And then I would assume that you also do that for the people that are picking, like for the add-ons and whatnot, like who's picking up the people from the pet from the homes and taking them to the airport and that type of thing.
Yeah. So basically, and this is the way most pet shippers work. You have drivers at all the major cities in the United States. So you have either a trusted driver that you work with all the time, or maybe you'll hire another pet shipper to just do the check-in for you. But for the most part, there's drivers that we have at each major city that we work with again and again and again. And so those people, they're obviously familiar with this business. So they have the van for it. They have the vehicle for it. They have the knowledge. They pick up the pets. They check the pets in at the airport.
Okay, I get it. So, all right. And then any other coordination or people that list of folks that you guys have to like kind of have on standby or whatever, or that you're hiring?
No, those are really the main things. And it's the same thing when the pet gets to the other country. For example, there's one particular agent in Germany we use for every single customs clearance when the person selects that option. So they're doing multiple for us every week. They're clearing these pets and delivering them.
What do they actually do? Like what's their role?
So every country is different. Every country has their own kind of procedure for customs clearance. And we get asked this a lot, but we can't really give the details on what every country requires, which is why we have to hire an agent there. So for example, in the United States, when pets are coming into the United States, we have to basically have the correct documents compiled. So the correct rabies certificate, health certificate, the person's passport, a POA form, and we pre-submit those things to customs using a customs broker. And so with most airlines, for example, with KLM, when a pet's coming into the United States, the pet will already be cleared through customs before it even lands, because those documents were all submitted to customs by a customs broker.
Okay. I didn't know.
And the pet lands. Yeah.
Okay.
And then it's just a matter of getting the pet off the plane and customs actually approving it. And then your pet's released to you. So that process still takes, an hour or two to get your pet once it lands, just because of the timeline that things work on, the speed that everything happens. But yeah, so in Germany or in Japan or these other places, things work differently. Every country has their own rules on how it works. But essentially that agent is going to handle all that for you, so that you just show up at the airport and get your pet from that agent, or they deliver it to your house if you need that.
Okay. All right. Got it. And I would assume that you're obviously sharing with your clients, like, or your potential clients, because a lot of people just go on there and they request a quote, right? And they're just trying to figure out all the different details and services that you guys provide. I would assume that you guys, because I probably, if I was shipping my pet, I'd have a lot of questions about all this different stuff. You know what I mean? But I know it's overwhelming, So how are you providing the information on exactly this is all the things that are happening? Like, you guys have a checklist? Do you talk to the clients? Like, what's that process like?
So basically it's variable, honestly. But when we first get that quote request, we send a very detailed quote, and it has a lot of general information on it, like the timeline, what to do next. And then it breaks down this automatically included service of basically booking the flight, meeting them at the airport, and handling that pre-completion of the health certificate. And then it has all these different optional add-ons.
Okay.
So then the person gets that, and it's pretty much up to them. So a lot of them will email us back. Some of them will call. Some of them will just accept it without even wanting any other communication.
They're just like,
So
take care of all this for me.
I mean, we get it all, and we have to reach out to those people and be like, hey, well, we at least need the measurements of your pet to move forward.
Yeah, which we have a video for.
Yeah, exactly. Which is a big issue in itself. That's one of the larger issues that we run into with pre-booking for people. Yeah. People sending their pets in, trying to send their pets in too small of a crate than would otherwise be needed.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's basically because, IATA has a certain regulation. And although your pet might look fine laying in this crate at night and your pet fits fine, it's really comfortable in this crate, dogs tend to, and cats tend to, ball up. They don't lay sprawled out. They don't stand upright necessarily in their crate. So for IATA, they have to be able to stand completely upright without touching any of the edges. And they have to be able to lay elongated in the crate without their paws having to curl under. And they recommend basically the crate needs to be the length of the pet plus half of the leg length. And there needs to also be a couple inches above the head. And so a lot of people, that's just not the case. They've already purchased crates and their pets just don't fit, because these crates will say, oh, this is for a 50 to 70 pound dog. That's what the crates say on them. And these crates aren't going off of IATA's regulations. A 60 pound dog might fit completely fine in that crate for being at your house and just sleeping in it or whatever.
Right. Okay. And so let's kind of touch on that a little bit. So have you had instances where people, like, they will deny, like, you try to bring the crates to the airport and then they deny the customers of flying the pets out? Does that happen a lot?
It does. It happens to people a lot that are trying to book on their own, because that's one of the huge reasons people call us last minute. Their pet just got rejected because of the crate or the crate size. But obviously we know what crate size they should go in, and we try to be very careful with that. That's why we check in advance, because the airlines charge based off of the crate, or based off of the volume of the crate. And so we have to make sure this crate size is correct, because if we find out later that your pet is this particular size and doesn't fit in the crate we quoted, then your cost is going to increase. Yeah. So we have to do that up front. And that's really the first step in hiring us. But anyway, so we try to be very careful with that. But we have had it happen with British Airways. They are the strictest in the whole industry. They actually go above the IATA regulations. Essentially, whatever your pet should fit in based off of IATA, you need to go one crate size larger for British Airways. Okay. And so we have had issues with them, but we just basically need to bring another crate, or they'll swap it out. Although they have that issue, they're very flexible like that. They usually have crates on hand because they deal with this so often, right, that they can put your crate in and swap it out for you most of the time.
Okay, got it. And then who's the easiest, or like the most common that you use all the time for airlines?
We use KLM and Lufthansa the most. Yeah. And British Airways, because if you have a pet going direct to London, you really need to try to find a direct route when you have that option. Okay. So we do use British Airways a lot for the direct flights to London. But KLM and Lufthansa are some of the best airlines to work with, and they do it a lot. They ship a lot of pets, so they have a very streamlined process, and you're not going to get those same kind of surprises versus airlines that don't do it a lot. They throw a lot of wrenches at you. They'll tell you last minute, oh, we can't send the pet on that route, even though they said they could. So yeah, you deal with a lot more issues with certain airlines.
Okay, so I want to know, there's a lot of pet shippers out there. How are you guys different from other pet shippers?
So I would say one of the main ways that we're different is just the customer service aspect. So we get told rather often, sorry, my printer is randomly going off in the background, but we get told often, that we have a very fast response rate, and a lot of people choose us because of that. And people will see that right off the bat when they're trying to inquire with us in email. That's kind of how everything continues to work once you hire us. So we're very responsive. We're very on top of things. And also, we're not going to raise your rate for the most part. So sometimes things happen that are out of people's control. For example, the airline cancels a flight, and so your pet now needs to be boarded and flown the next day. or on whatever route they book the pet on. So we try to keep the cost to the minimum when that kind of stuff happens, instead of just passing everything on to the client and us needing to make more money from going to the airport twice and this and that. We try to absorb as much of that cost as possible, which is really helpful because these people are already paying a lot of money and this is out of their control. And so as long as we can do that, we do. So that's one of the reasons why I think our company is preferred to some of the other companies. Yeah. And I would also just say, you know, we have really good reviews, which I think speak for themselves, and those kind of reflect how we operate.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know that your military audience probably definitely appreciates you guys being speedy, because more often than not, the military member has a lot of shit to do and not a lot of time to do it. You know what I mean? So, and I always, I always tell my military audience that, look, you've got to get on pets like immediately, you know, like it's going to be the most expensive, maybe the biggest headache for you, especially if you don't get all your ducks lined up in a row. So I always tell them that's probably like the second most important thing that you need to get taken care of. The first thing obviously being getting your orders and your medical screening so that you actually can go into Germany. You know what I mean? But then that next thing needs to be, you need to start thinking about your pet stuff, getting the health certificate, you know, the shots, the rabies, you know, all that stuff, which we also have another video for. So, okay. Makes sense. Okay. IPATA? How do you get, what do you say? What's the link?
IPATA.
Okay.
At least that's how I say it, and everybody who I know.
I think that's a common word, so I guess we can say it however we want to say it.
We might get a comment on there. That's not how you say it, but
yeah. But what is that? I noticed that there's a ton of recommendations for pet shippers underneath that. So why is it special to be a part of that club or whatever? You know what I mean? What is that about?
So it's the International Pet and Animal Transportation Association. So basically, those are all pet shippers or affiliates of that. So for example, some airlines are part of IPATA. Okay. And so we have kind of our own, IPATA has its own kind of rules and standards that people have to go by. So for one, you have to be trained well. Like somebody on the staff has to have a training on the IATA, which is different, IATA, which is basically the international governing agency for air transportation. So they govern by law the conditions the pet has to be under. So IPATA requires that somebody on your team has an IATA LAR certificate. Okay. So basically, somebody on the team needs to know what they're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Yeah. So if the umbrella is here, the IATA is at the top. IPATA is the branch underneath that or something, right?
Well, IPATA is just its own organization on its own. So it's not really, it just follows IATA's rule and just happens to have a similar acronym. But yeah, because the P is the difference there, the pets and animals. So IATA governs everything when it comes to air transportation. Okay. Where an IPATA is just a private organization that has a group of members that are being held to certain standards to basically like, so for example, some airlines, Delta and United, I believe they require you to hire an IPATA member. Sometimes they'll allow active military, these airlines, to make their own bookings, but for general people, a lot of times they don't. They'll require you to go through an IPATA member. And that's because they know that the IPATA members are trained, that they know what they're doing, and the pet's going to show up with the right documents and the right crate size. And the airline isn't going to get in trouble for shipping this pet. Because the reality is, if you ship a pet, for example, in a crate that is too small, the airline can come get fined a huge amount of money by IATA if they happen to see that. And so the airline doesn't really want to deal with that. On that same issue, when you get the pet over to these other countries and the paperwork isn't correct, the airline has to deal with that. They potentially are going to have to fly that pet back to the United States.
Have you had that happen before?
I have not had that happen. No, that would be a pet shipper's complete nightmare. I mean, something has gone horribly wrong.
I would not want to take that phone call.
but you know, in a lot of places, they'll just hold on to the pet. The pets will have to quarantine for months. But either way, the airline doesn't want to have to deal with all that. These pets aren't released until they clear through customs. So the airline has them until that happens for most countries. So that's why they just require, basically you hire a pet shipper, and they know that the pet shippers that are under IPATA are reliable pet shippers. And on that same note, if you are unethical in doing things, just scamming things and just taking advantage of your clients, they can report you to IPATA and you could potentially get kicked out of IPATA. So there's that whole layer of liability and ethics in IPATA, which helps, which is why, like, if we're hiring a clearing agent in Germany or wherever, we always try to hire one in IPATA, unless there are none. You're going to potentially Uzbekistan or something. Maybe there are no IPATA members there, and you have to reach out to other IPATA members to see if they've hired an agent in Uzbekistan that you could potentially use.
Okay.
But yeah, so we always try to hire IPATA members because we know what we're going to get. We know they're going to be good, reliable. They're going to show up to the airport and do what needs to be done. And we're not going to have surprises where they just don't show up or, whatever. You can imagine anything could happen if you're hiring a random company.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Okay. I want to get into like misconceptions, frequently asked questions, a little bit more details on some things that people probably ask you guys a lot about. You know what I mean? So the first one that I want to go back to is the seasons. Like, when is the best time to ship your pet? Yeah, let's just start with that.
Yeah, so the seasons are very important because that's where you will run into most of the hurdles. So spring and fall are going to be the best because the weather is the best. During the middle of summer, you can run into all kinds of issues in a place that's normally, Seattle, where it's usually nice and cool, can all of a sudden be 95 degrees and no pets can fly. So basically every airline sets their own rules for that. So IATA, again, the governing agency, they have particular rules of how the pet needs to be cared for, the pressure and temperature, once the pet is in the airline's care and on that flight. But those are all minimums. So the airline can decide, okay, well, we're not going to take pets when it's 90 degrees outside, for example. Yeah. And that's because they don't want to have to handle this pet, not necessarily when it's in the cargo hold, because when it's in the cargo hold, the temperature has to be pressure and temperature controlled to follow IATA's laws. So it has to be, I believe the range is under 85, I believe, in the cargo hold. I'd have to verify that, but I believe that's what it is. But when the pet's out on the tarmac waiting to be loaded, it's whatever it is outside, 95 degrees. And that's, the pet is going to be outside at some point. The airline needs to make sure that they have somewhere to hold that pet that's temperature controlled before it gets on the flight. Yeah. And that's really where you run into all these issues and regulations on temperature for hot and cold. It's not actually so much when it's in the aircraft, because that aircraft's up there flying at thousands of feet above the Earth's surface, and it's obviously at a completely different temperature range up there. And that's why they have to have a temperature and pressure controlled hold. The issue is more when the pet's on the ground.
Okay, I see. Now I've heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lufthansa does have a temperature controlled holding area. At least yes. I'm promoting that. So I don't know. Is that true?
Well, okay. So in the actual aircraft, every airline has to, in order to ship pets, you must.
Oh, okay.
If you're shipping pets as cargo, you must have a portion of your hold that's temperature and pressure controlled that those pets are in. So if you're not doing that, then you are breaking the law right off the bat. So they are, obviously unless something is went wrong, the hold is temperature and pressure controlled, just like it is for the passengers. So the airlines have this technology. It's obviously the same thing that's going on with every passenger aircraft. It has to have that hold. So that's not really the tricky part.
Okay.
But so as far as the airlines, every port is going to be different. So for example, with Lufthansa out of IAD, they won't ship any pets from June 1st to September 1st. And that's because at IAD, they feel that they do not have the resources in hand to make sure that those pets are taken care of well before they get on the flight. So therefore, they're not going to allow it. They don't feel comfortable taking care of these pets during these heat conditions. So they just put an embargo. They just said they're not going to do it.
Wow. Okay.
That's their choice. Yeah. So that's kind of the way that works. So some places like here, like in Atlanta, a lot of times if the temperature is really high, they'll keep the pets inside of a room in the actual cargo terminal. So the humans are also in that same area, just in a different room. And that's where the pets will usually stay for a while until they are taken out to be loaded. So they don't usually have that temperature. So when it's 90 degrees in Atlanta, you can still usually ship pets, but not snub nose, but that's a whole different thing. But just general pets, you can usually ship them out of Atlanta at 90 degrees.
Yeah. Who is friendly with snub nose pets?
Lufthansa and KLM are. KLM has 5 specific breeds they will not ship, period, which is the American Bully, English Bulldog, French Bulldog, the Pug, and the Boston Terrier. Any other breeds they will ship. So that's nice because if you have a pit bull, for example, it doesn't have to go in a metal crate. It can just fly. If you have a Shih Tzu, it's fine, treated just like any other dog. Mm-hmm. So Lufthansa will ship all of the breeds, but they have temperature regulations and metal crate requirements as well. So if you have a pit bull, for example, then it has to go in a CR82 impact crate, or basically the regulation is a CR82. It's a reinforced crate.
Okay, gotcha.
And they also will not ship pets over 80 degrees Fahrenheit if they're snub nose with Lufthansa.
Oh, okay. So I guess it's on the client to figure out all those rules and regulations if they decide not to use a pet shipper. But see, this would make me automatically want to work with somebody that already knows the answers to these questions. You know what I mean? They've got 100 other things to worry about. I would not. Yeah, this would be a headache. I'm starting to get a headache just listening to all this stuff. So, but let's talk about like how long the pets are actually in their crates. You know, feeding, like how do you feed them? When do they get fed, and how long are they in these crates? You know, I've always been curious about that.
Yeah. So basically, the pets are supposed to be fed basically before they're checked in. Really, they should be given a light meal, and keep it light because you don't want your pet to have to go to the restroom. Now, technically, that is an IATA regulation that the pets are supposed to be fed basically before they're checked in. But to me, that's a little counterintuitive because you don't necessarily want your pet to have to go to the restroom, but at the same time, they're going to be in there for a long time without food potentially. So they're checked in usually around 5 hours before the flight departs. They're in that crate as soon as you check them in. They never come out of the crate again. Oh. And the crate's zip tied, and that's where they are. So then obviously they're in that crate during the flight. And then once they get to their destination, when you ship pets as cargo, which is one of the perks of shipping pets as cargo and using a reputable airline that does this, when they get to the layover, they'll be taken out of their crate. They'll be cared for there. They'll be given food. They'll be given water. The regulation is these dogs need to be fed every 24 hours. And cats, you might have a puppy or a certain pet that needs more than that, and you just need to make sure the airline is aware of that. Okay. But so they'll feed the pet, they'll give the pet water at the layover, and your pet will not be stuck in the crate at the layover. And once it's time to get ready for the next flight, your pet goes back in the crate. Same process, goes on the plane. Once they get to that final destination, they should be taken out of the crate. That can be a little bit more tricky depending on where they're going and what their process is for customs clearance.
So you guys don't have any control over once they land. So say Germany, for example, because it sounds like that's the most common place. You don't have any control over knowing if someone's actually taking them out right as they land
technically no, but I do think it is happening. And there's a couple reasons. For one, these airlines they put the animals on last and they take the animals off first. Okay. And then you have the whole, for example, the Frankfurt Animal Lounge, and that's what they're doing all day, every day, is taking care of these pets. So these pets are being brought in. They know these pets need to be taken out. These are all animal people. These are all animal lovers. It's not the regular airline staff. It's the people working at the pet lounge. It's the regular staff that's getting them off the airplane because they're in their crates still and they're zip tied shut. They're not engaging with the animals. Once they get over to the pet lounge, they have to expedite that. They have to get them over there as quickly as possible. Then they're dealing with a bunch of animal people. Yeah. And, they also need to inspect the pets. So the pets aren't just released. A veterinarian inspects their paperwork and potentially inspects the pet and makes sure the pet looks good, and then the pet's released. So yeah, there's a whole process there where they can't just be stuck in their crate the whole time. They should be getting their chip scanned. They should be getting inspected. They should be making sure that they're healthy and everything's matching up before they're released.
Okay, and so that's obviously a good reason why you put all the paperwork outside of the crate so that they can see the name, the shots, all the health certificate, all that stuff, right?
Yeah, and just so it doesn't get lost is the main reason, because if it's not on the crate, how do you know for sure it traveled with the pet and that it didn't get put on some other flight? And I mean, it happens. That's a common hurdle, honestly, like pets getting to the country and the original paperwork is lost. So that's another reason to hire a pet shipper, because we have all these ways to try to troubleshoot that, get new documents. We have to bring them back down to the airline, have them put on the next flight. Some places they will not release your pet until they get those new originals. And you'd be surprised how many times these documents just disappear.
Yeah.
Even though they were fixed to the crate potentially. But, you know, once we leave these pets, a manager could come by and be like, hey, that dog looks like it's pit bull. I want to look at the paperwork and make sure it's not a pit bull. It's listed as this and that. Right. You know, there's just all this opportunity for these papers to be kind of moved, and that happens. Yeah. Yeah. So tell me, so you guys are communicating with your clients from the moment that you pick the pet up, if that's the add-on that they choose, to the time that it gets dropped off to their new home and their new destination, right? Like, so we have an app, which basically it's like our portal. And so we post pictures on there, we post communications, and also the airline will have tracking. Their tracking is kind of more similar to what you'd get with FedEx, for example. So it's just really going to tell you when the pet's departed and got to where it's going. And it's more of like, just scanning that this airway bill got on this flight. So it's not super detailed. You're not going to find out an exact location, for example. It's just going to say departed, arrived, that kind of stuff. But so yeah, that's kind of the way that works. But we send pictures every time after we do the check-in, so people can see, you know, their pets when we last left them and whatnot, and how the crate looked and everything like that. Okay, cool. All right. Are there any other frequently asked questions or misconceptions or anything that you want to clear about maybe what people are asking you guys? Yeah. So one of the main concerns is, you know, how safe this is for pets. A lot of people are like, oh, no, I can't send my pet in the cargo hold. I won't do it. And I always say to them, well, you know, if you have another option, like taking your pet in cabin, maybe you consider that. For one, it's just going to save you a lot of money. But, you know, a lot of times there is not really another option besides them going in the hold, but it's not nearly as dangerous as people think. Like, you know, if your pet cannot be by itself for 10 hours in its crate in a temperature and pressure controlled hold, then potentially you could run into issues. But every pet we have shipped, they can do that. You know, they are fine. Like people, it's more of an issue with the person thinking their pet can't do it. Yeah. But most of the time these pets arrive, they're just fine. They didn't even go to the bathroom in their crate. Yeah. We've shipped thousands of pets. So of course we have had instances. We've had pets arrive dehydrated. We've had, when we sent a pet to Uganda for the first time, for example, the people were struggling to get their pet from the airline. They wanted to clear their own pet through customs. Those pets were severely dehydrated when they got them. So we've had some like things like that happen for sure. But in all actuality, we have had one pet ever that did pass away in the flight. And that was a Boston Terrier. He was like older, 9-10 years old with a heart condition. So it was kind of already, you know, not ideal for this pet to fly, but the veterinarian did sign off. The person wanted to go ahead and ship their pet. But yeah, that pet did pass away in the flight. And that's it. That's the only time we've ever had a pet pass away in the flight. And we've shipped thousands of pets. So that actually brings up a good point. Like, what would you say, like people need to do to prepare for their pet to go overseas? I would say that make sure your pet is comfortable being in the crate, because the pets that are comfortable being in the crate, they feel like that's their den. You know, these are den animals. They get in there, they're not super anxious, but every now and then you have people, these pets have never been in the crate and they act like it. You know, they're pawing at the crate nonstop. They're howling, they're going crazy in there, and they arrive, but you can imagine, I'm sure it's a pretty anxious transport for them. Oh yeah.
So are there like tricks of the trade that you know of or whatever to keep to get your dog to be comfortable with their crate? Like obviously it shouldn't be like a punishment to go into the crate. You know what I mean? Like how do you make sure that, you know, when you tell your dog to go in the crate, because I think it's just like a human negative connotation, like get your crate, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do we ensure that the pet knows that this is a safe place, comfortable place to be in? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think initially a lot of that is them just having a positive experience in their crate and leaving them in their crate and you coming back. You know, of course, like if you're going to go to the grocery store, maybe that's a place to start, you know. I mean, ideally, I guess it would be better to start before that. But if your pet, for example, just won't go in this crate or he's going crazy every time you put him in the crate, maybe just deal with that, put him in the crate for 30 minutes, leave, come back, give him a bunch of treats, let him know it was all good, and keep trying to try that methodology. Put his toys in there. Yeah. Just keep trying to get them really comfortable. Like I know with my dogs, we have a crate here. We put one of our dogs in just because she chews up everything when we leave. She loves her crate. Both the dogs go in the crate all the time. It's like their little safe space. They take their stuff in there. If the dogs are in trouble, they run in their crate. And that's because they know we're not coming in that crate to get them. So, you know, the pets can really get used to their crate. You just have to give them some time to do that.
Okay. Got it. And is that like one of the first things that you would recommend to get, like if you're going through the pet shipping process, like get your crate, get that, like measure your pet, get the crate, and then start kind of training them whilst you're doing all the health certificate and shots and stuff?
Yes. If your pet's never been in the crate, that's critical. Some people's pets are super used to crates. And they, for example, don't have a vehicle that they can bring the crate to the airport in. So they need us to bring the crate to the check-in, which is fine as long as your pet is used to crates. Like my pets would have no problem getting in any crate. It's not going to be an issue. But yeah, for sure, if your pet's an anxious dog or hasn't been in the crate, that is critical because that's really the only thing that you have control over in that way. Like they're going to be in that, and that's going to be their little home. And if they can feel more safe and positive in there, then it's going to be a better experience for them.
For sure. Okay, cool. Was there anything else that you wanted to clear up?
Let's see. Another thing with some perks to hiring a pet shipper is if you run into issues at the airport, we're not going to just leave you stranded. So that's another thing we get a lot of people calling me like, oh, the USDA wouldn't endorse my health certificate. So I don't know what I'm going to do. The pet can't fly now, or I'm at the airport. They just rejected the pet. Like we can step in and, find boarding for your pet, make sure your pet's at least taken care of, make sure that there's an alternative option. And so that's one of the things that people run into a lot when they're trying to arrange their own pets shipment, because even if you have a flight set up and everything, something could always come up to where your pet can't fly. And on that same note, those dates can't be guaranteed the way that you think they are. So just because the airline's booked it on this flight or this and that does not necessarily mean that they're going to be committed to that, because it is not like the passenger booking where you've paid in advance and they have this whole commitment to you and there's all these reviews. When you're booking pets as cargo or in these other ways, they don't usually collect the money until you check the pet in. And so they will change that flight on you if they need to. And that does happen. And so people need to take that into account when a lot of people really want a date promised to them. And it just doesn't work that way. And that's whether you're hiring a pet shipper or not. Got it.
Okay. How do how do people get started with Feathers and Fur Express? What do they need to do?
So go onto our website, expresspets.com, and just request a quote, or of course you can read the information and then send us a message if you want, but requesting a quote is the best way to do it. We'll send you a very detailed quote and any other kind of general information, and then you can just email us back or you can call us. Our phone number is listed on everything, and ask your questions, and we'll just go from there.
Okay. And I have to say too, that you guys have military discounts, right?
Yes, we do. So yeah, we offer for general, for example, Germany, EU, we offer a $500 military discount if you're also using a military veterinarian. If you're not using a military veterinarian, then the discount ends up being $300 if you want us to also handle the USDA endorsement and the FedEx label going back and forth, because those do cost money. So that's the discount for the active military. And we also have retired military discount, which I believe is $200. We offer a discount for civilians moving on orders. And then if you're going to Japan, the discount is usually $600. And that's because the USDA endorsement is a lot more expensive for Japan. So you get a bigger discount because you're going to a military vet and you don't have to pay that $121 USDA endorsement for Japan.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I love working with you guys. And it sounds like your fans and your clients are raving about you guys, and you're getting nice reviews and whatnot. So I will continue to create more content to promote all the good things that you guys are doing. And I appreciate you talking with me today. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we go?
No, I think that's everything I could think of.
We're going to think of at least 2 or 3 things when we hang up.
Of course, always.
That looks like we'll do another video, then a follow-up, right?
Perfect.
Okay, cool. Well, then that's about it. I appreciate your time, Lindsay, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Daniel. Bye.
All right. Bye.